Today I'm going to be covering three things. Some of the traction that I'm seeing around the stock market as well as real estate and what my thoughts is for the year coming. Second thing is, as the year's about to come to an end, it's time for you to really start thinking about taxes. Some ways you can potentially save. And the third is an opportunity that I see for disruption. For those of us who want to create those $1 billion idea, I do see a huge opportunity based upon some things I personally experienced for the past few weeks. Dow has hit a pretty much all-time high. It went over the 36,000 mark that it peaked at last time we had that bull run in 2021. But for some reason, I'm not feeling that in my portfolio. My portfolio is not at an all-time high. My retirement is up quite a bit. All time is up 40%, and that retirement account is only a couple years old. I think it's the one I have the biggest increase in, actually second biggest. I have another retirement which is much older that I had with another company, which is back to that 110,000 that it peaked at last time. And I have been contributing to it because I took a loan from it and paying it back, but literally probably 5,000 back, right? It at its top value in terms of dollar that I actually put inside of there is probably like maybe 45,000, and it more than doubled. So now it's about at the 110,000 mark that it peaked at previously. So which is great, which is a good sign. But however, I'm not seeing those all-time highs. Typically, when you get all-time highs, your portfolio is a lot higher than last time, because what happens is you have all this inflated money that was pretty much either printed and it has to be put back into its proper place. And because they have put more supply of money inside of circulation, therefore it should make values of assets grow, because assets don't depreciate. In order for that to depreciate, it has to match with the amount of more money that they put in. Meaning, if they printed 10% more money than previously was in circulation, that means the growth of assets should increase by 10% as well. And this is me creating a correlation. It doesn't equate to be exactly like that, because you have some assets that will increase depending on the demand for that asset, right? If a particular company is doing well, like Apple is in demand, then of course the stock price is going to increase. NASDAQ also is almost at its peak. It's not quite there yet. I think this is probably the reason why, because a part of my portfolio, a huge part, is more concentrated in the tech sector, and NASDAQ is where a lot of those tech stocks live. And it has not peaked over the last time it peaked 16,000 and change. It's getting there, but it's not quite there. It's still about a 1,000 points short. And then SP 500, we peaked last time 4,800. We're close. We're very close, 4,700. So we're seeing now these things are reaching all-time highs. And if you're not seeing your portfolio reach those highs, you know, when you allocate funds towards those like ETF funds that are linked to these major indices, this is where you probably will be more of a 1-to-1 ratio. Where things I think are heading for next year, things I want you to think about is inflation. Look around you, look at the grocery prices, or things seems to be much more balanced. Look at your pay. Have you adjusted to this new style of living to know that grocery prices have pretty much got more expensive? Is your utility expenses, right? Your internet, your streaming providers, like, have those increased? If you have adjusted and things feel like a norm right now, then it's most likely will be this new norm, and then we are going to see peaks in the stock market regardless. Because once people are adjusted and the interest rates are not increasing, creating panic and everything, it's going to create that increase inside of assets value. It's just going to happen a little slow. It's not going to happen like in 2020, 2021, because they dropped interest rates so low, it created this boom. Money was so cheap to pretty much print, to borrow. Therefore, it allowed businesses to take this money, try to generate as much money for their businesses as much as possible. It increased advertising costs, which is what we saw Facebook increase like crazy. Facebook has been doing pretty well, actually, with their sales of their metaverse goggles, the glasses, right? I almost bought one, the MetaQuest, the third one that they just came out with, but I didn't do it yet because I'm waiting for the Apple to come out and I want to see how it goes. But they have been killing it, surpassing to Apple's sales when it comes to, I believe, AirPods. So this is doing pretty good. Stocks overall, Grayscale is getting back to its norm. I would say not pre-pandemic, because it's still a lot lower. Because look at these prices that it peaked at, $75, right? We can see this number at the top, on the top right here, $73.45, and we're at 17. So it still has another 4x and change that it has the potential to reach, right? BCHG, it's at 376. It peaked at about $60 last time. A huge way to go. These are all linked to crypto markets. If you're new to what Grayscale are, their stocks are linked to crypto. So inside of my retirement, for example, I can't buy crypto directly, so therefore I have to buy Grayscale in order to match that momentum that crypto is creating inside of there. So there are more. I'm going to dig deeper into this in next week's video to provide you some suggestions and how you can allocate a portfolio of possibly $10,000 and what you can actually disperse it to. This is not complete financial advice. It's things that I'm doing that's working for me, and I'm sharing it with you because I don't feel like I should be holding knowledge if it's working out for me pretty nicely, right? By the grace of God, of course. Coinbase is hitting back to its high. So pre-pandemic, it was at the 400, and it just launched around that time too, like in 2021. So of course, it's going to be much higher. The 200 mark is where I think it's meant to be, and it's still underneath that. So therefore, I do see an opportunity of purchasing this, and I bought quite a bit around the $40, $50 mark in Coinbase. I hold quite a bit, but I'm more invested inside of crypto themselves. But as crypto go up, we're going to see that go up. Jumia is another opportunity, which I think, because they're very strong in the e-commerce space in Africa, they have good infrastructure, that there's an opportunity there for a lot of growth. And last time it peaked $70 a share. So we see a lot of potential. The market cap is only 400 million. Companies like this, I do see them surfacing to about like 8-9 billion in market cap based on today. Africa has a huge e-commerce industry, and if they capitalize on this like Amazon, they could be the next Amazon, or might even get acquired by Amazon too at some point. Broadridge, I own these stocks because I worked for them at some point, and they gave me these stocks probably in like 2017, 2018, around $60, $65 per share. So I'm way up. I'm not selling. This is something I'm holding on for emergency purposes. After taxes, I think the value of it is around like 20,000, something like that. GoTo, I've seen spiked a little bit, and I'm holding on because when it went to like 50 cents a piece, like right here, I bought in. I'm talking about thousands. I put like at least $3,000-$4,000, and it already 6x I think on average from what I bought before, because I had some before, but I dipped down a whole lot around the 60 cents mark that it had reached. Tesla, we know we've seen it in the news, so there are things going on with it which I'm not gonna dive into. Lab is another one which I'm considering. They're about to actually go through a merger with another company. I think it's called Somno Technologies. I think it's going to be good for the company. They had new leadership a couple of years ago, and that's been working out decently. But I do think for them to expand so what they focus on is pretty much like cancer therapy. They create, manufacture, and market instruments, consumable reagents, and software for researchers and clinical laboratories worldwide. What piqued my interest with them is that they were doing a lot of like cancer-related research. They provided tools for hospitals to use in order for them to be assisted with these research. And it's a market I don't think is going nowhere. It's only going to evolve as diseases are evolving, and these things are being used by doctors. As much as I believe in much more of the natural ways of healing things, I do believe in that side of researching and discovering new things, because certain diseases, basic medicine pretty much heals us, right? Like NyQuil puts us to sleep and helps us get rid of like certain coughs and everything. Our body does most of the work, but these things help us fight through it as well. Now let's look at the crypto market. Near, I love Near. This is where I love it. We're from $2.44 to almost $3 a share. I own like a couple thousands of Near, I believe. Maybe 2 or 2,500 shares, I think. Maybe more. But Near is doing really well, and I'm looking forward to it. I believe in their technology more than just like looking at the coin itself. Doge, Ethereum, everything has been at a flat. But Bitcoin, it reached another peak. Last time we saw it at 43,000. Now it's at 44,000. And that's been pretty much it. I think things are going to really escalate maybe next year if interest rates either stay where they're at or they surface down. If they surface down and people are starting to borrow money like crazy again, it might create more inflation. But if they don't, they kind of stand still and slowly buying. As long as people are not being greedy, I think it's going to create the opportunity. Same way I feel about the real estate market. I thought that the 5% down payment on multifamilies would have changed the market quite a bit. And I don't see it impacted that much. I feel like the pressure is still the same, as the amount of supplies that's available is still low. And the supplies that is available is just straight garbage. These landlords, they're horrible. Not taking care of their properties. They're trying to get that quick sell. These are horrible, like very horrible like landlords. I don't know how in the world they became landlords. The conditions of some of these properties and some of these numbers don't make sense. The properties that I see at a good value, they are more expensive. They don't financially make sense at all. So right now I'm staying off a bit. I'm only looking at properties that's been listed for 60 plus days. And the minute we start seeing more and more people kind of being like me and such, be like, listen, I ain't touching it. I'm going to kind of step aside, and more bad landlords are purchasing from other bad landlords. Foreclosure is going to increase at some points because they miscalculated the math on this, the rental income versus the purchase price, the mortgage amount of it actually makes sense, and they're just going to be willing to let go. That's another impact I see coming. Maybe not next year. It might take some more time for it to really get there, but what the effect of what we might see next year is things that are from last year. Like, meaning if there's a lot of foreclosures that started happening then, it usually takes about a year for that to really cycle through. So that's that. So that pretty much is my thoughts of where things might be. I don't see grocery prices going to increase like that. My utility have not increased as much as they did in 2021. Like, I'm telling you, gas prices for that's coming into my home went up by like almost 3 times, which is crazy, and it forced me to have to increase rent. Electricity as well increased quite a bit. Water, like sheesh, all at once too. Like property taxes, insurance, all at once. But things are surfacing up this year. I didn't see much of an increase. It's been like normalized now, which is pretty great, and it should affect the rental market to be much better. But rental versus mortgage right now, rental seems to be make more sense. Like, I don't see myself buying at today's conditions because I would be buying at a loss in hopes of, in a few 4 or 5 years, then things will surface up, rental would increase, and I'll be all right. Unless I had a huge amount of down payment to actually put in. So that's one side of the market. That the other thing I want to talk about is because it's close to the end of the year, I want you to start thinking about taxes. The number one thing I always say go to is donate, because you want to offload room for you to receive more. And this is more of me spiritually speaking, because it's something that the Bible have instructed us to do. Neglect the whole 10%, 20% tithing and all that stuff. I disregard all that. I give into my heart's measure. Of course, I made that a target to do 10% at one point. Last year I did 20%, and I want to slowly increase that as much as I can. And the reason I'm telling to you in percentage basis and I'm not giving to you in dollar amounts, because you got to give it based upon your own measure. I think we all relatively can account for the percentage. Like, if someone had $100 and they gave $30, and I have $10,000 and I gave $2,000, that person that gave the $30, they put more than me because they only had $100. They gave more in that sense. This is not about a competition as well. You got to give to your heart's measure. Some of us have families, have dependencies and everything. If $10 is all you can give because all these other expenses that you have going on and so forth, and do it. But it does require trusting in the Lord. Don't treat God as a slot machine or ATM where it's like you swipe, you give in and you expect more out in that sense. No, you just got to give. Don't expect nothing back. But from my experiences, the more I gave, the more I received back. And sometimes it didn't happen within the same year. It didn't happen the next year. It happened on its own time. And when it didn't happen, when I tell you abundance, I took a leap. Like the pastor I was at the church I was at last Sunday, he was mentioning next year's a leap year, and I didn't know that. But those leaps actually happen when we give with our own hearts. And then the IRS, of course, gives you tax deductions for giving to a lot of charitable organizations, which is the great thing I suggest you do. The second thing is try to expense things out that you feel that you need for next year. Technology. If you need a new laptop, buy it now. Don't wait till January, because you can write it off for this year when it comes to your job functions. Even if you're on W-2 and you have to buy a laptop that you're going to use for work, you can actually write off a portion of it or all of it, depending on your circumstances. But I do encourage you to ask your accountant for other things that you can do that. Max out as much as you can to your 401k. Although you have until April 15th of next year, but start thinking about it now. Allocate the budget to see how much you can contribute towards that. So those 3 things right there, I think some of the things you need to really consider, so you can give to charities, buy things that you think you essentially need for your business. Even if you're on W-2, there are things you can actually write off equipment-wise. And the third thing is try to put more into your retirement. You have until April 15th, but definitely look into that. Now, let's talk about the opportunities that I see for disruption. So there are 3 big players in that space that I see right now that are similar. I can't say they're very similar because there are other companies like them, but 3 of them I've been paying a lot of attention to. Salesforce, right? Microsoft, they also have been getting more into the CRM space. I know because I'm doing consulting work for Morgan Stanley, and they're leveraging that technology. And then the third thing is Shopify, right? So looking at their technologies, I'm telling you this right now, there's a huge opportunity for disruption because the way that they've architectured some of the technologies, their security I think is great, but their front end user experience customization is just straight trash, straight garbage. Because I'm a person that's in the field, I understand technology very well. I can literally code an application, but I don't focus on the development part. But I'm able to communicate with people in that front. When I tell you to customize things on those fronts takes so much time, it's like whoever came up with this did not think about it. But they also may have done this on purpose. That way they could keep a lot more money flowing inside of their organizations. Because what happens is if you got to get like those trainings for Salesforce, Microsoft, or even Shopify, right? It creates opportunities for developers and it creates a different parts of the economy. There is plus sides to that. But in all honesty, if we're trying to reach for efficiency in the long run with the introduction of AI and everything, why are we not trying to be efficient in the way we do things? And let me tell you my experience with Shopify. I'm currently building an e-commerce platform, launching. Initially, we're going to start with like these custom t-shirts. And I built the prototype inside of plain HTML using Bootstrap. You may not know what any of these are, but think about HTML as the language that most websites are built or the browser has to receive from whatever technology that you use. Bootstrap is a tool that Twitter created, and it allows you to create these like libraries where you could specify how your buttons look, how they work, operate. It helps you really be organized in your look and feel of your website or applications and things like that. So I built it with that, and then when we try to translate it to Shopify, for one page, they have like 4 or 5 files separated out from one page. Does that make any sense? I don't know who thought of that, who was smart enough to think about that. Maybe it's a security approach, but to me, it doesn't make sense with the way technology works and my understanding. So there's a huge opportunity to disrupt Shopify when it comes to that. And it's not just for the user end, it's also for the developer end as well. So the user end is the person that's going to be shopping on the website. I'm seeing inconsistencies in some of the way they force you to do things when you're building your own custom like theme and template, and it's kind of sucks. I'm like, why wouldn't you make this easy so that way we can make this easier for the user so it can be consistent behavior across the board? They didn't do that. And then for developers who have to build these things, why do they have to go through 4 or 5 files for one page? Doesn't make any sense at all. So it's quite, to me, stupid in all honesty. And Salesforce is known for that as well. They make their things very not scalable and not capable. And some simple things like drop-down behaviors, right? Scrolling patterns. For the page to scroll, it takes like a whole lot for things to happen that way. So those are like some things I see you can look into. There are so many different aspects of it. Of course, I'm not diving into. They have their positive. You have to analyze the good things that they do. And I think security-wise, these platforms do this very well. Because I don't really hear about them being hacked or anything like that. But they do need to work on that. And it creates opportunities because I don't think they're going to work on that because it's a business model that's working for them. I think they're doing that on purpose, but it could create an opportunity for the next person to come in because the mom and pop shops, the oldies, they're going to rely on those technologies that they're familiar with because they're more like the trustworthy name. So of course it's going to be harder for you as a new business to come through and capitalize on that. But I've seen Monday.com, they've had their CRM introduced and their revenue was around like $300 million like pretty much last year, and I think they're public. So if I go to Monday, yes, their stock price at 195, and from its low it was 107, right, and now it's at 195. So they're doing okay, and their market cap is $9 billion actually, but their revenue, I think, if we look at it real quickly, they're still doing negative. They're not having a positive return. So annually, so they brought in 519 in 2022, and net earnings was in the negative. And last quarter, they're getting close to profit margin, which shows a good, promising sign in that sense. So I don't know how well they're really going to capitalize on the market, but I do see an opportunity with them and everything. So that is pretty much it. I wanted to open up your minds to think about. They're not the only ones. There's probably other things out there, but always look for the opportunities to see where you can create those next billion-dollar ideas. So peace and love. I hope you found all this insightful. I'm looking forward to share with you several stocks. I think to build a portfolio of about $10,000. If you have $1,000 as well, I'm going to break down both of those so that way you can look at things differently. Trust in Jesus. Have an amazing one. Peace. Thank you so much for checking out my video. My goal is to be able to share as much knowledge, wisdom, experience that I've been given, privilege from God over the years, to be able to give that to you and also be able to receive from you as well. This can definitely be a two-way dialogue. It doesn't have to be one way at all. It's just for us to be engaged. And I'm just continuously sharing as things that I see move along the market. So I hope you find insights, and your feedback is greatly appreciated as well. How can you support me? Right now, I have these wristbands. You can get them at Luxtreaux.com. I've been selling them on eBay for quite some time. It just says make your statement. It's just an encouraging, inspirational message. You can purchase these right now, available on there. Eventually, it will be spun off to other things and I'll have other products, but that's one way you can do right now. But most importantly is just making sure you receive something from the content I've given. And if you have any feedback, that is probably the most valuable thing I could say you can give to me. So I appreciate it, and I hope that we can continue to build a long-term relationship with each other and just grow with one another. Peace. And if you have any questions, definitely drop it below. Hustle, hustle.